All right, let's start. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for coming. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight's event. My name is Tim Oakes. I am the Director of the Center for Asian Studies and Professor of Geography here at CU Boulder. And just to start things off, I want to first thank Julie Seagraves and the Asian Art Coordinating Council for helping to make Taliesin's visit possible and her lecture here possible today. Julie is a member of the Advisory Council for the Center for Asian Studies, and it's always a pleasure to work with her, and she's been great at helping us connect with artists coming through and people who know a lot about art and about the Asian art scene, and it's been great to have her help with that. I just met Taliesin, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. And one of the things I noticed in her profile, the various profiles out there in cyberspace of her and her work, but one of the things that stood out for me was that she has worked in the field of contemporary Chinese art since living 2 years in rural China in 1999 to 2001, I believe in Hubei. Is that correct? And that stuck out to me because, I mean, reading that just kind of sent me into a reverie of kind of my own long-term experience in rural China. And I was so happy to see that as part of your background because there's a lot of work that's done on the Chinese art scene that kind of just dips into kind of what's going on in places like Beijing and Shanghai. The people who don't kind of have a longer-term kind of sense of the much deeper social kind of context that supports a lot of that. And I think having that kind of experience in rural China provides a lot of that. And so Taliesin's eminently qualified, I think, in many ways to talk about what she's going to talk about, and for other reasons that we'll get to in a minute. But that's I think a key part of her background. Since 2007, she's been the founding director of AW Asia in New York City, which is a private arts organization that promotes the field of contemporary Chinese art through institutional loans, museum acquisitions, curatorial projects, and publishing. And as you'll see in her talk today, she has worked closely with Ai Weiwei's studio to oversee the management of the Circle of Animal Zodiac Heads that has been on display in Denver this past year. It's till January. So if you haven't seen it, there's still some time to see it. And I'm sure after her talk today, you're going to want to go down and jump on the FF1 and go see that. She has lectured widely on contemporary Chinese art in places too numerous to mention right now, but all over the world, really. She's published in ARTPULSE magazine, Yishu Journal of Contemporary Chinese Art, the Journal of Contemporary Chinese Art, and ArtAsiaPacific magazine. She holds a master's degree in East Asian Studies, yay, from Columbia University, and she is a Ph.D. candidate in art theory and philosophy at the Institute for Doctoral Studies in the Visual Arts, which is just a fantastic organization in New York that I'm only starting to learn more about. So please join me in welcoming Taliesin Thomas.
Thanks so much, Tim. Appreciate that. And thank you all for joining this lecture on Ai Weiwei. And this is really to complement, as Tim said, the Circle of Animal Zodiac Heads on view in Denver. Really special thanks to Julie Seagraves, who is such a love and brought me out here for this occasion. Thank you. And I would like to mention on a personal note that my twin sister attended UC Boulder for 2 years. So I actually lived out here in Boulder with her summer of '96, and we had a great time, and it's a thrill to be back in Boulder on this occasion. And so thank you. Thank you so much for joining today. This lecture is about 40 minutes long, and there's time for a Q&A at the end, I hope. So I am actually really looking forward to hearing your insights. All of you have your own knowledge and experience of China, and I find, in fact, the most invigorating part of doing these discussions is exactly that, the opportunity to share ideas. Thank you. Ai Weiwei, global artist, borderless humanist, contemporary emperor. The contemporary emperor part probably sounds a little provocative, but like many of his fans worldwide, I really admire Ai Weiwei for what he's doing and his unprecedented approach to aesthetics. I praise his desire to communicate to people far and wide, across borders, and around the world. Really, he's positioned himself as a kind of contemporary emperor of art. So there's a lot to say about this remarkable artist, and I am sure many of you are already familiar with Ai Weiwei and his work. So this is really about sharing a few of those ideas and then hopefully hearing more about what you have to say about it. In the ancient Confucian culture of China, courage was exalted as a virtue. Really today I aim to share with you my understanding of Ai Weiwei's artistic courage and his place on the stage of the art world and beyond. It's truly a privilege to be aligned with this world-class artist and exemplary humanist. Our organization in New York, AW Asia, works closely with Ai Weiwei on a number of projects, including the Circle of Animals, Zodiac Heads, sculpture series. So this is currently on view at several locations worldwide. And it was launched in New York officially in 2011. It has since exhibited at over 40 international venues and counting. So this project, in fact, has been seen by millions of people worldwide. We estimate it to be one of the most viewed sculpture projects in the history of contemporary art. And you can find out more about the Zodiac Heads online if you'd like to see. We have an official website. So this, again, the work at Denver, please go see it if you haven't seen it, Civic Center Park. This is a beautiful installation. I was there today. The weather was gorgeous. That fountain is actually quite apropos because it mirrors what I'm about to tell you about the short story behind this work. So in addition to the Zodiac Heads, we have worked with, as I said, with Ai Weiwei on a number of very cool projects, including the Never Sorry documentary, which you may have seen. We're the executive underwriter of this movie. And it was released in 2012. This documentary kind of offers a nuanced portrait of the artist and his the censorship issues unique to his work and his kind of ongoing battle, his situation with the Chinese Communist Party. You can find Never Sorry on Amazon. We've also published a few special books with the artist, including these two Little Red Book style Princeton University Press titles. You have there, Weiweiisms from 2012 and Humanity, a recent book that coincides with his documentary Human Flow, which I'll discuss shortly. So both of those books emulate the Little Red Book that was widely distributed, of course, during Mao's era and promoting Mao's statements and writings. This was, of course, during the Cultural Revolution. So again, Ai Weiwei's kind of underhanded remark about Chinese culture. So like much of Ai Weiwei's work, the Zodiac Heads do offer an ulterior political message and a critique of Chinese nationalism. The short version of this very complicated story is that the Zodiac Heads used to be on display at the Yuanming Yuan. Some of you have probably been there, right? The old summer palace outside Beijing. And the Yuanming Yuan now, of course, is in ruins, but it used to be this exceptional series of fountains and palaces. Here you have an etching of the original Zodiac Heads in situ, those sculptures, the animals, each of them would spout water every hour. So that is the kind of background for the current version of the work that you see. During the late 1970s, Ai Weiwei used to hang out there. Here you have an image of him sketching those ruins. So the historical narrative behind this work is really interesting. Of course, the history of China is always it's a real humbling thing to study China. Thank you always for allowing me to talk about this stuff. The 1860 Opium Wars, the British go in, they sack the Yuanming Yuan, the French steal everything out of there. As a result, 5 of the 12 Zodiac Heads go missing, never to be seen again. And then many of the Chinese consider the works to be this national treasure, right? But Ai Weiwei's contemporary Zodiac Heads series, in fact, is a reinterpretation of this claim. So I'd like to share with you him speaking directly about that, because I think he says it quite well. And this is a little short making, the documentary, the making of the Zodiac Heads. It's a short video clip here that will be, I think, illuminating for you with respect to this.
They never really care about culture. This is the nature of a communist, to destroy the old world, to rebuild a new one.
Et nous commençons les enchères à 9 millions d'euros. Personne ne couvre l'enchère de 8 millions.
They're not clear about what is most important in those so-called tradition or classics. The Zodiac is a perfect example to show their ignorance on this matter.
14 millions d'euros accusés. Je ne comprends pas.
When, historic artifacts that were in fact looted from Chinese palaces make their way into Christie's and Sotheby's and into auction houses in Hong Kong and Paris, people are already kind of primed to see this as an extension of this past humiliation.
Lot 749.
Looting itself, of course, is one of the issues, but art always taken by the people who has power.
The only thing I ask the Chinese people, to the Chinese government, to give liberty to Tibet people and to welcome the Dalai Lama. That's all.
What do you do with the past? What do you do with what's become relics of the past? Do you value it? Is it important for the generation now? Is it important for tomorrow?
就因为圆没圆的东西它非常敏感，它像一个拨弄着我们从来没有愈合的伤口，我们感觉痛。
I don't think that's national treasure. It's nothing to do with national treasure. It's designed by Italian and made by French for Qing Dynasty emperor, which actually is somebody who invaded China. So if we talk about national treasure, and which nation we talk about?
So I think you see there, in his own words, really where he's coming from on that. So Ai Weiwei really doggedly committed to questioning the foundation of Chinese culture, history, politics, and art. And his work as an artist activist is born out of this kind of outspoken questioning and engagement with his own country. Ai Weiwei's trajectory as an artist, of course, is deeply rooted in China. However, these days, his artistic odyssey actually transcends those roots. So over the last century, as we all know, China has grown exceedingly prosperous, having emerged from an agrarian nation and a dynastic system of rule into a powerhouse economy and the workshop of the world. But the complexities facing Chinese society, of course, are manifold. We in our country have our own problems. Every country has problems. This is not to point the finger. This is really just to open up a discussion about where Ai Weiwei fits into a very complicated worldview, right? So the nature of the totalitarian state in China has in fact created an atmosphere ripe for dissent. While China has grown, so has her artists, and Ai Weiwei's path illustrates a truly unusual journey, and I dare say that journey reads a bit like an epic. So here you have the young Ai Weiwei with his father Ai Qing. Ai Qing, once a poet of national renown, a celebrated poet. He was labeled a black element during the anti-rightist campaigns of the 1950s, a period in which millions of Chinese were sent to labor camps or exiled to the countryside. We've all studied the history of China. We know how unfortunate some of those political campaigns have been. So Ai Weiwei and his family were sent to live in rural Xinjiang in the far-flung north. He was there for 17 years. His father was forbidden to read or write. He was forced to clean public toilets in the village. And during a portion of those years, the family actually lived in an animal pen. And it was a very difficult time for Ai Weiwei and his family and for many Chinese. Ai Weiwei's father was imprisoned for poetry such as this. So really the relationship between Ai Qing, Ai Weiwei, and the Chinese Communist Party reflects this kind of cyclical nature of political dissent. So the family eventually returned to Beijing. Ai Weiwei began to study there, but the scars of that period of exile remained. And one might say that Ai Weiwei, in fact, has been fighting for justice his whole life. So this is actually an image of the artist showcasing a scar from a beating that occurred in 2009 at the hands of Chinese police, which I'll mention shortly. So a review of China's 20th century, especially the second half of that 20th century, reveals the intense nature of certain social political conditions and the situation in China and Ai Weiwei's place within that history. The Cultural Revolution is one extremely powerful example of social circumstances in China. This was a decade-long period, 1966 to 76. It was during those years that art served as the kind of handmaiden for political ideology. So it was Ai Weiwei's generation that grew up with a very controlled understanding of art's purpose and function. Here you have an example of that in propaganda art. Unfortunately, the Cultural Revolution, as we know, was a disastrous period for the cultural heritage of China. During this decade-long debacle, the Chinese actively eradicated their own cultural heritage with their bare hands. Frankly, the ethos of this particular time frame is somewhat hard to imagine, but it was highly influential with respect to art making and art appreciation, or frankly, lack thereof. So here you have an example of Cultural Revolution violence. So this was Mao's directive during those years, smash the old world. And once again, I want to say this is not to criticize, this is just to look at these images together and understand a context. After the death of Mao Zedong in 76 and the loosening of the stranglehold that was the Cultural Revolution, there was an emergence of unofficial art around China, a total flourishing and flowering of the artists coming forward and making their art. So the STARS group, the Xinxin group, founded in 79, Ai Weiwei was among the founding members. These artists exhibited their work in their homes, or in this case, on the railings of the National Gallery of Art in Beijing, on the railings outside the National Gallery. There was no formal art market system in China at this time, no galleries, nothing like what we have today. So the 1985 STARS Manifesto included this statement: in the face of the realities of Chinese culture as a whole, the greatest responsibility of China's intellectuals and artists is to exert every effort at any cost to help the people of China to shed the past and to transform into a society of free and creative spirits. This will be the true measure of China's modernization. So I think this statement aptly reflects Ai Weiwei's proclivity for art as agency. So it was just actually when the Deng Xiaoping's Gaige, right, the economic reforms of the 80s were happening all around China, Ai Weiwei left, and he came to the United States. He lived here for 12 years, 10 of which he spent in New York City, and this period would prove to be a significant part of his development as a so-called radical artist. So here you have a great image of the young Ai Weiwei in front of a Jackson Pollock at MoMA. In New York, Ai Weiwei encountered the work of many esteemed Western artists and the philosophies of postmodern and contemporary art. Ai Weiwei, of course, with an Andy Warhol silkscreen, and lo and behold, decades later, this blockbuster exhibition, Andy Warhol, Ai Weiwei, at the National Gallery of Art in Melbourne, it reflects these kind of early artistic influences, and the pairing of these two remarkable artists in a contemporary context was actually a huge hit and brought record numbers for the NGV and featured many of Ai Weiwei's oldest and most iconic works, including this piece, Safe Sex, which we loaned from our private collection of his work. And again, the 80s, the AIDS crisis, and his life in New York, all of this is reflected in this kind of Joseph Beuys-ian piece. That same show later traveled to the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh, and here you have an installation view pairing of the two artists along with a number of other works that we loaned from our private collection, and a very lovely installation. Again, the ready-made concept, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So arguably, Ai Weiwei's exposure to protests as a type of performance began in New York City, right? So he was there 83 to 93. He worked a string of odd jobs. In fact, at a certain point, he was doing portraits in Central Park. He roughed it, and he also took thousands of photographs of Manhattan's colorful urban life. So these 80s photos really capture that world of rebellion, transience, and civil revolt. Ai Weiwei is still a prolific photographer and a compulsive Instagrammer. I started an Instagram account just to follow Ai Weiwei. Of course, it's evolved since then. I mean, earlier in the week, it was like over 18,000 posts. My God, how do you keep up? His posts, you know, it's often peppered with selfies. Here's a selfie that I was lucky to get with the artist a few years ago. Sorry for the self-promotion. So the quick footnote here is how was I introduced to Ai Weiwei's work in the first place? So it was thanks to Eaton Cohen, founder of the Art Waves Gallery, and later Eaton Cohen Fine Arts. Maybe some of you know Jerry Cohen, founder of the East Asian Law Department at Harvard University. That's Ethan's father. His mother, Joan Leibold Cohen, one of the earliest historians of East Asian art. So I worked for that family for quite a while, and this was my entree into the field of contemporary Chinese art thanks to them and their extensive network of people that they know. So the idea was really that I managed Ethan's gallery, but it was an amazing thing to see Ai Weiwei's work for the first time and to understand that Ethan had this very close relationship with Ai Weiwei. Ethan gave Ai Weiwei his first solo show in the United States, Old Shoes, Safe Sex, in 1988. And mind you, back then, Ai Weiwei was actually making his own work. So here you have a picture of the artist with those shoes and the kind of work that he was doing with his own hands. Now, of course, he has an extensive team of assistants between China and Berlin, where he lives, that oversee the fabrication of his art. There has actually, this is a beautiful piece that relates to that image from his early days. There's been some unfortunate news with respect to his studio in Beijing, which I'll mention in a moment. So while Ai Weiwei was living in New York, there were two critical events in '89 that really reshaped the field of contemporary Chinese art. The first event was the China Avant-Garde exhibition of '89. This was an extensive exhibition under the title No U-Turn, a comprehensive look of what was going on in China at that time. It was 293 artworks by 186 artists from around China presenting the latest developments in the field. The second, of course, was the fervent uprisings in the spring of '89. We all know students, intellectuals, labor activists gathered in Tiananmen to protest a corrupt government. The late 80s in China was a time of widespread inflation and economic setbacks. So this was high unemployment as well. This was a massive social movement with incredible potential. Unfortunately, as the world knows, that passionate public demonstration ended in civic tragedy and is officially deemed the Tiananmen incident by Chinese authorities, but the correct word is massacre. And so the events of '89 really changed everything in China, especially for the artists. So the post-'89 artistic milieu was greatly affected by this social devastation. The kind of optimistic attitude of the 1980s, that manifesto, we're going to change China, and the art's going to be at the forefront of that, all of that was squashed. So it turned into a deeply cynical atmosphere among these artists, and the art created during this period reflects that collective soul-searching among Chinese artists. Of course, Ai Weiwei witnessed those events from afar. He was in this country. In 1993, he returned to Beijing at the behest of his ailing father. His mother chided him for wasting 12 years in this country. He went back with nothing. He wasn't married. He hadn't finished school. He never graduated. He soon became active, though, very active in the underground art scene in Beijing. He dubbed their locale the Beijing East Village. It was a home to a ragtag group of artists that were all making interesting work. And, a lot of those artists went on to define the field. So if you study contemporary Chinese art, then you have here Zhang Huan and Ma Liuming, other figures that have contributed to this discussion. Through his practice, Ai Weiwei began addressing the wounds of the recent past, as this photograph, June, implies. June. In fact, this is the artist's wife, Liu Qing, who's also an artist. And I think quite a sexy and provocative image, and it's quite something to look at that and think, gosh, it's 1994, but it looks like it could be a lot older. So Ai Weiwei was in fact first recognized by the international art world for these smaller works that deface traditional Chinese artifacts, such as ancient furniture, vases, and urns, turning these cultural relics into contemporary examples of Duchampian gestures. So over the past decade, of course, Ai Weiwei's Duchampian gestures have really blown open ideas about contemporary Chinese art on a much larger scale. So here you have a gorgeous image of his installation, Bang, at the Venice Biennale, and he was representing the German pavilion for this particular installation. It just looks outrageously beautiful. So in fact, Ai Weiwei's biggest self-proclaimed influence is the artist Marcel Duchamp. Of course, Duchamp's lasting contribution to the whole of art history is the idea of the ready-made and the idea that anything can be an object of art if the artist decides so, right? It's the lasting contribution. So this is one of Ai Weiwei's iconic New York photos, a profile of Duchamp filled with sunflower seeds. And remember, the Tate in London showed that big sunflower seeds installation. We're going to look at that in a moment. So some argue the internet is to Ai Weiwei what the urinal was to Duchamp. In fact, Ai Weiwei credits the internet as the real reason he became famous. Ai Weiwei's internet activities, in fact, resonate with a generation of worldwide netizens who escape to the internet right there on your phone every day, all day long. This is, this is to realize greater autonomy not found in the material world. We all do it. We all have a second life. So I would argue that really what sets Ai Weiwei apart from his artistic peers around the world is his brazen use of online media as his art to raise collective consciousness. That's about critical social political situations, not just in China, but around the world. So even Ai Weiwei's earliest work reflects this determined examination of established cultural values and prescribed social history. This triptych is really a strong example of the subversive nature of Ai Weiwei's art. Probably all of you have seen this image. It's a quite hackneyed image, if I may, associated with the artist. But this really highlights the kind of cultural destruction that's happening all the time in China as older aspects of society get wiped out for, to pave the way for new developments. So over time, of course, Ai Weiwei's spirit of resistance has evolved into a blatant act of defiance, as illustrated by this iconic photo. And that defiance is borderless. Ai Weiwei's art illustrates the kind of ongoing contentions between the individual and the political ideology of any country, anywhere in the world. So, like much of his artwork, there's this tendency toward a proliferation of a concept. And that brazen commentary is ongoing. Take it or leave it. So, since his emergence as a kind of lionized international art star, Ai Weiwei has become increasingly recognized as a political activist. And he uses his art precisely to address, as I said, these larger circumstances. So a primary example of this is, of course, the Beijing Olympic Stadium known as the Bird's Nest. So this structure was conceived in 2003 by Ai Weiwei in collaboration with the Swiss architects Herzog and de Meuron, and they worked closely with the Chinese government to create the Bird's Nest. It was around that time that Ai Weiwei also began this online blog. So he worked in collaboration with the architects and the Chinese government to create this magnificent structure, but he later went online to denounce his involvement with that project, and this is what he said about it. So that last line, I think, is really the heart of the matter. Any celebration without an underlying concern for social conditions, without any real empathy with humanity, is a shameful act. This humanity topic is really the thing that he's driving then and now. So after airing that blasphemous statement online, the Chinese authorities immediately shut down that blog of his. He then turned to Twitter. He's still really active on Twitter today. If you follow him on Twitter, you know that. So there are really many examples of Ai Weiwei's socially motivated art. So really, I would say the most moving of all those artworks is this one called the Citizens Investigation Project. So as you recall, in May of 2008, there was a devastating earthquake in Sichuan, just several months before the start of the Olympic Games. Over 80,000 people perished in that earthquake. Ai Weiwei and many others were outraged by the Chinese government's poor handling of the incident and their refusal to release information about the death toll. It's a kind of funny thing about the news. I think we all notice this. Why are we so obsessed with death counts? When anything happens, we want to know how many people died. Well, just imagine something like this occurs in this country and our government doesn't tell us. I mean, it's really intense. So Ai Weiwei states that he was really speechless after this event, but it didn't stop him from taking action. He began a private citizens investigation. So he worked with a team of volunteers, and they went into Sichuan. Working together, they were able to tally the names of over 5,000 students that perished. Of course, there were more students that died than that, but this was a heroic act. And of course, those investigative activities provoked trouble with the Chinese authorities. You've probably seen this image. In 2009, he was beaten by police. It's that image of him with the scar. And he was beaten because he was in Sichuan trying to support the activities of another local activist that was doing the same thing as he was. He famously posted these images online. This is him at the hospital in Germany. So since then, Ai Weiwei's art has become increasingly political and conceptual and larger in scale. This is his 2009 installation in Munich, Germany. It's comprised of thousands of backpacks. He created this work as an homage to those students that died in the earthquake, and the statement is it's a statement by one of the parents that lost their only child. She lived happily in this world for 7 years. So this is what Ai Weiwei says about it. I came to art because I wanted to escape the other regulations of the society, but the whole society is so political. The irony, I'm botching it, but the irony is that my art becomes more and more political. You know, Ai Weiwei is really relentlessly committed to this quest for freedom of expression. Here you have an image of the artist at an event that we organized for him at the Paley Center for Media in New York, and he was in conversation with Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, and it was kind of embarrassing to witness Ai Weiwei boldly press Jack Dorsey on why Twitter is censored in China. You know, many major websites are censored in China. I would argue that, you know, Ai Weiwei is probably the most socially engaged artist on the planet. How many artists go on CNN with Christiane Amanpour to discuss their gripes with authority and censorship? You know, if you follow any major international news source, then you see Ai Weiwei is constantly in the news. About a year after that particular visit to the U.S., Ai Weiwei was detained by the Chinese authorities. That was April of 2011. He was held in secret detention for 81 days. Here's an image of protesters in support of Ai Weiwei. This caused, of course, an international uproar in the art world and beyond. Many major art institutions, such as the Tate Modern in London, advocated for his release. The Guggenheim Museum in New York did as well. It was an effort to raise awareness about his situation. One of Ai Weiwei's most famous exhibition, The Sunflower Seeds, was at the Tate Modern, and recall that earlier image of the sunflower seeds from the 80s photos, again, the many reverberations of Ai Weiwei's artistic practice, and again, building on this 5,000 incredible legacy, 5,000 years of uninterrupted art making in China. These are all kind of connect the dot moments. There's a lot we could say about that. I'm just trying to streamline these ideas, but those sunflower seeds relate again to the Mao era. So after his detainment, Ai Weiwei was sent home and he was put under domestic arrest, okay? But what he did do during those years was produce a series of small sculptural vignettes that detail the science fiction-like conditions of that detainment, 81 days in secret detainment. So here you have this kind of Kafka-esque vision of Ai Weiwei. From what I understand, having read about it and the artist himself speaking about it, there were 2 guards literally within 4 feet of him 24 hours a day. Everything that he did, whether he had to defecate or shower, whatever it was, they were instructed to stand right there with him. So here you have another image from that series. So during those years of domestic arrest, his internet activities were especially compelling because he was forbidden to leave Beijing, he was forbidden to leave China. He lived in the virtual sphere. That was 2011 to 2015. So during that time, he and his team orchestrated several incredible exhibitions from his desk in Beijing, since he wasn't allowed to travel. And this was one of them, the Ai Weiwei According to What retrospective that launched at the Hirshhorn Museum in 2012 and then later traveled to several other American museums through 2014. Another show that he arranged from afar was his at-large on Alcatraz Island, which included this extremely provocative Lego installation on the floor. These are images, Lego images of other political dissidents and prisoners of conscience. These are portraits made of thousands of Lego pieces. So despite everything, it's like Ai Weiwei kind of remains above the law, even when that same law literally surrounded him in the form of the surveillance cameras that were installed around his home studio complex in Beijing during the years of his domestic arrest. of course, all the more reason to create subversive art. And again, Ai Weiwei's tendency to proliferate a concept and repeat and multiply. So here you have an example of Ai Weiwei wallpaper that's been installed at various exhibitions. You have the Twitter bird and the surveillance camera, the handcuffs from the detainment. The footnote here, however, this past summer, they destroyed a studio. The Chinese government went in and leveled it. Of course, you may have seen that in the news, but you can also see it on his Instagram account. That's what you see here. He states, there are profoundly deeper things to be concerned about. The idea of the human condition never respected in China. This is kind of a visual metaphor for that. But these days, Ai Weiwei is not living in China. Since the return of his passport in July of 2015, he has been traveling and living abroad, and his largest effort has been his documentation of over 40 refugee camps worldwide, where he has witnessed the plight of millions of displaced refugees. Ai Weiwei's repertoire of roles is certainly dynamic: artist, architect, photographer, iconoclast, occasional rock musician. Yet these days it would seem really that his most prominent work is that of a global activist. This is a very arresting image of him hanging out in the refugee camp and documenting the conditions. So more than just a formidable force in the art world, Ai Weiwei is increasingly recognized as a valiant voice for the people, and not just the Chinese people, but all underrepresented people. His work as an artist activist reflects the power of his personal stance as a concerned citizen of the world. He does have a tendency to push this too far. So really, some of his critics and detractors suggest that it's too much, right? Such as the example of this photographic recreation of the tragic vision of Alan Kurdi, the 3-year-old Syrian boy who drowned in 2015 as he and his family were trying to reach Europe amid this refugee crisis. Although a crass image, I think really it brings attention. I think Ai Weiwei's intention is to bring attention to these issues. Ai Weiwei comments that when he first started filming in the refugee camps, the thing that he really noticed was people's clothes, because every time they had to move, it was piles of clothes left everywhere. So in fact, he negotiated with the local authorities and had clothes shipped from some of these refugee camps to his studio in Berlin. He had a team of assistants wash all the clothes, and then he created this installation of the clothes with images of him at the refugee camps and all the news that he could find related to these refugee issues. And the whole thing he calls this kind of Gesamtkunstwerk, right? The total work of art. The video, the sculpture, the intention behind this whole project, of course, the meticulous recording of everything, the documentary footage, all of this represents the same effort. And Ai Weiwei is really using that star power as an international artist, as a platform to give the refugees a voice and to offer testimony to their presence in the world. Here you have another example of a work related to this at Berlin's concert hall. This was 14,000 discarded life jackets. He collected life jackets from these refugee camps, the treacherous journey to reach safer havens. Okay, so his documentary, Human Flow, launched at the Venice Film Festival in September of 2017. This film is about the refugee settlements in 23 countries around the world, including Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, even the United States. And Human Flow is really a sweeping humanitarian epic, and it attempts to address the situation of these 65 million forcibly displaced people around the world. So this is not an art movie. It's a sobering portrait of an enormous and dire humanitarian crisis. It's available for streaming on Amazon. I highly recommend it, and I'm going to show you the trailer.
Being a refugee is much more than a political status. It is the most pervasive kind of cruelty that can be exercised against a human being. You are forcibly robbing this human being of all aspects that would make human life not just tolerable but meaningful in many ways.
The more immune you are to people's suffering, that's very, very dangerous. It's critical for us to maintain this humanity.
الان 60 روزه با پسرم همینطوری داریم میچرخیم، ولی هیچ کس نیستش که بگه یه راهی رو بخواد به ما نشون بده. کجا برم زندگیمو شروع کنم؟
If children grow up without any hope, without any prospects for the future, without any sense of them being able to make something out of their lives, then they will become very vulnerable to all sorts of exploitation, including radicalization.
ليش انتوا هنا اليوم؟
طشة آخر الفصل. المنفذ الوحيد في غزة، في السجن الكبير غزة، مش في غزة بس، سجن كبير يعني.
The officials came here and told them, look, there's no way you're going to get papers to continue. Either you go voluntarily or we arrest you.
I respect you. I respect the passport and I respect you.
It's going to be a big challenge to recognize that the world is shrinking and people from different religions, different cultures are going to have to learn to live with each other.
I really think that movie is undoubtedly his most powerful fusion of art and activism, and I really hope you see it. There are really a lot of amazing examples of Ai Weiwei's exhibitions happening worldwide. I'm just going to run through a few of them here as we kind of round the corner on this. Here you have an image of a recent porcelain show in Istanbul. A detail from that exhibition includes this porcelain plate, again, another interpretation of that tragic vision of the young Syrian boy drowned on the beach, Ai Weiwei's tendency to mine a concept, right? Variations on a theme. There's another installation view here of that show in Istanbul, and all of these plates include harrowing scenes from refugee camps. Another installation of Ai Weiwei's work in Jerusalem. This beautiful, his trees are, I think, are among his most beautiful work, this conceptual relationship between material and form. Earlier this year in New York, Ai Weiwei did an amazing project, Good Fences Make Good Neighbors. He called it his love letter to New York City. Remember, he lived there for a decade. This project was a collaboration with the Public Art Fund, and the title, Good Fences Make Good Neighbors, references a line from a Robert Frost poem, The Mending Wall. So this series of large site-specific sculptures explored themes of migration and immigration boundaries, this kind of ongoing refugee crisis, and it was presented at more than 300 locations around New York, really beautiful. And the walls, the fences, that's really, again, the comment, the ulterior comment about narrow-minded ideas, about separating and dividing people. Ai Weiwei's devotion to activism goes beyond just the human. It includes animals. This was an image of him earlier this summer in Myanmar to raise awareness about the logging elephants in crisis, the elephants being exploited for tourism. Lastly, we're currently collaborating with Ai Weiwei to produce these magnificent Zodiac portraits of the Zodiac Heads in Lego. And this work will actually launch Jeffrey Deitch's new gallery in Los Angeles. Maybe you've seen some of the news. There are 3 big shows of Ai Weiwei's to happen in Los Angeles later this month. So this is comprised, again, of the heads from the Zodiac with images from the F-Off series, and they're superimposed over those backgrounds. So really, in conclusion, more than 60 years ago, May of 1942, Mao Zedong gave his famous Yunnan talks on the role of art and government, declaring that there should be no art detached from or independent of politics. In this respect, Ai Weiwei could truly be considered a faithful son of the state. He has followed Mao's mandate. But Ai Weiwei is really not going back to China anytime soon. In fact, his octogenarian mother has told him, don't come back. In a recent interview at a special event at Anderson Ranch here in Colorado, in Aspen, Ai Weiwei commented, I never miss anything about China because I never felt China was my home. I always felt discriminated against. So it's true that Ai Weiwei's detractors accuse him of using his cultural capital to leverage his activism, and that his kind of larger-than-life persona has turned into this brand and a business. Ai Weiwei can't be stopped. Among his peers, Ai Weiwei's unique form of aesthetic challenge reflects his conviction to promote equal rights and freedom of expression for all people. As he comments, liberty and freedom are not empty words. They are values that not only need protecting, but redefinition. Ai Weiwei's artwork and worldwide activities offer a truly compelling look at cultural history, social activism, digital realities, civil rights, political conditions, and the power of art to influence humanity today. Thank you. Yes, so I think you're mentioning, again, these topics are quite loaded and complicated. The idea that the refugees are this object of Ai Weiwei's focus and artistic practice. It's one aspect of what he does, but it has turned into an extremely important aspect of how he identifies himself. And I think it does go back to that early formative life experience when he was rejected by his own country. He was sent to the far-flung area of northwest China, and his father, Ai Qing, tried to commit suicide many times. And Ai Weiwei, I think that was a deeply painful experience that has drawn him into the world in this outstanding way. I don't see any other artist from China or anywhere else attempting to do this. So he's not going back to China. He's not there, and I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but yes, it is an object of his gaze, as you say. Yet I myself, if you see the movie, when you see the movie Human Flow, I mean, it really is like, I can't believe this artist is doing this. Nobody else is doing what he's doing. So take it or leave it. It's really a statement. Thank you. I have not said that to him personally, but there was always an emperor in China. And I dare say my own thought about it is this man is the contemporary art emperor.
If there's going to be one.
If there's going to be one, I don't know, between him and Xi Jinping.
Oh, no doubt. No question. For sure.
It's a really crazy time. These crazy guys, not just in our country, but everywhere. So Ai Weiwei, I just admire him so much, and yeah, thank you. Yes, you're absolutely right. People definitely discuss this. And as we know, 89, a lot of those artists, a lot of really important artists left China and immigrated abroad, and they could stand abroad and comment back to their own country without incurring the repercussions of that. And now we see this with Ai Weiwei. Yes, he has gone beyond China, as you say. He's addressing this global humanitarian crisis. And is it as effective now that he's not there? I wonder that for myself. Yeah, he's definitely doing a lot of work. Maybe it's watered down, similar to Andy Warhol, some of these blatant commercial endeavors. And this is a very interesting comment that you're making that I think will continue to play out, because he's not in China anymore. He's not making the critique from his homeland. That not yet, but gosh, that's really a tough recent news story, isn't it? Oh boy, I don't know. We've got a heavy burden to bear, all of us. He's just being outspoken about it, but thank you. That's an important news piece. I'm sure you're familiar with this situation that's happening in Xinjiang, other areas of Muslim China. Yeah, the complicated themes. Again, we remain humble as we attempt to share ideas about this culture, and all of this is part of the discussion. It's complicated. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. The young Ai Weiwei with his father Ai Qing, they were ousted to northwest China, to Xinjiang, which is really a different part of China. If you've traveled there, you know it's very culturally very different from the kind of eastern seaboard mainland cultural atmosphere. So yeah, I wonder if the next project will, in fact, pull from his past with respect to Xinjiang specifically and this topical, unfortunate news about what's happening with the Muslim Uyghurs. Thank you. Very interesting. I'm remembering in the Greek tradition the idea of logos, right? Logos is the written word. So you had the Bible, and people could read the Bible. Some people could read the Bible, and the rest couldn't. And so what happened? The Bible then became the images, and the ideas were presented in aesthetic form. And frankly, one of the most violent images in all of global aesthetics is Christ hanging on a cross, crucified, with a crown of thorns, piercing his head, and he's dead. So it's such an amazing thing that aesthetics as a topic, as a subject, as a potential in this human experience allows us to conceive of that kind of ultimate pain. Because when you see Christ hanging on the cross, you never forget that image. So yes, you're saying that maybe there's a line right here, and Ai Weiwei's towing that line. And China, of course, with this, again, to mention this expansive history, and China having given us some of the most venerable art forms known to humankind, calligraphy being the kind of, I dare say, highest example, highest art form, calligraphy. Just ink and paper, and what comes out of that, extraordinary. I think it's a real privilege to be involved in the art world and to study art and to allow for art to be a vehicle for addressing the most difficult things that we all know about. We all share this precious human life, and I really admire artists like Ai Weiwei that are maximizing the power of aesthetics. And he's not the only amazing Chinese artist. This was a wonderful chance to talk about him. There's so many other incredible Chinese artists and global artists contributing to this dialogue. So I personally remain humbly in pursuit of these ideas through aesthetics. So, but thank you for that comment. I think there's so much more we could say about all that, and I certainly don't want to keep you here on this lovely evening. Thank you so much for joining